My name is Agama Lafia James Musa Agama Lafia. I am married with 2 children and I'm a realtor.
2020 began like any other year with new resolutions and determination by people to do away with the failures and obstacles of the past in favor of new expectations and anticipation of success. Individuals, families, communities, and states made plans for the year totally unaware of what the year had in stock for the world.
2020, it's a year that will go definitely in history for me, and that a year that we learned to look inward. A phenomenal year that you survive based on what you know. A renewal of the mind constantly actually was what helped a lot of us, because at a point we were all scared.
Nigeria had just achieved a milestone of adequate preparations for the year with the return of the January to December budget cycle. The federal government was set to roll out implementation programs in its next level agenda.
We have given the executive today everything they need. We have given them the budget by passing it. We have given them the finance bills. We have given them the public procurement amendment bill. These are central to ensuring that the implementation of the 2020 budget is improved over what has been happening in the last few years.
I'm very pleased that the National Assembly worked uncommonly long hours in the interest of our people and the national economy to ensure detailed legislative review and passage of the budget within 2 months.
Then came news of coronavirus disease in Wuhan, China. At the onset, it was like the distant sound of the minaret in faraway Asia. But that lasted only a little while. February 27, 2020 became the day everything changed in Nigeria. It was the beginning of a year-long struggle with what was to degenerate from a medical outbreak to become a global medical emergency and then a pandemic. All sectors of the Nigerian economy and polity had their backs bent to the weight of the pandemic, which had altered plans, imposed new ways of life, and determined national priorities.
I am recommending that all families be aware that the elderly among them are the most vulnerable and should be specially protected from needless contact with children and persons who could be positive for the coronavirus infection. The same should be said for all persons who are known to have underlying diseases such as tuberculosis, HIV, cancer.
The first line of defense, in accordance with global practice, was contact tracing with the index case, an Italian who had become infamous as the carrier of the virus into Nigeria. Next was to limit the spread of the virus to contain the mobility of people. China and some countries in Europe had imposed landmark restrictions on movement, and Nigeria, having been hit by the pandemic, followed suit.
All citizens in these areas are to stay in their homes. Travel to or from other states should be postponed. All businesses and offices within these locations should be fully closed during this period.
Lockdowns became the new mantra and practice in vogue. Workers were made to work from home. Worship centers were shut. Recreational and other places of large gatherings had their doors closed.
We still maintain our faith. We reach our members through social media and through TV.
The Muslims should know that this thing that is happening to us, we are not the only one. This is our own turn to share from the world pandemic challenge which the entire world is facing.
The fate of business owners and employees, especially those in the private sector, suddenly hung on the balance. It was only a matter of time before several thousands of workers began to lose their jobs as the reality of the lockdown became clearer. Schools were closed across the country for months, arising from the outbreak, national examinations and the 2020-2021 admission exercise were postponed. Most higher institutions moved their lecture theatres online, while examinations were conducted virtually. School's calendar was altered and some parts of the curriculum were left untouched. Next was the struggle for improved remuneration for medical and health workers as motivation and compensation for their exposure to the virus, which had begun to infect several of them in the line of duty.
What our people are asking is that in the same vein that these monies were provided and included in the budget, let our own demands that has financial implications be included in the budget.
The threat of a strike by medical health workers sent shivers down the spine of many Nigerians. Accordingly, the federal government approved new hazard allowance for medical workers who are considered as frontline workers in the nation's response to the pandemic.
We are doing 50% of their salary grade level under the commerce for medical doctors.
So far is good enough. We'll continue to do our best. I'm hoping that they will go and get it paid.
The percentages that have been done, it's going to be way above the current 5,000 hazard allowance.
Review of the year 2020 leaves an ironic mirth on the lips of lovers of the environment. For the first time in a long while, the environment was reported to have witnessed tremendous improvements with the reduction of pollutants in the atmosphere.
The fact that there's a great reduction in human activities have actually helped the environment to recover. It's like giving the environment a break from all the activities that has been associated with our quest for survival.
As against the norm of humans confining wildlife in tiny spaces for tourist and leisure purposes, coronavirus pandemic confined humans in their homes and gave animals the opportunity to live and walk free again.
What we learn from all this is that humans have been very disruptive in our behavior, in our destruction of habitats, in our transformation of nature for profit or for what we think is pleasure.
The Federal Ministry of Environment was on the front line of Nigeria's response to the pandemic. The ministry mobilized the general public to be more conscious of environmental health in managing conditions like the coronavirus.
I would like to urge Ministry of Environment at the state level to be proactive and key into the preparedness in their respective states. That way, the containment of the coronavirus will not only be multi-sectoral, but also easier and more effective.
Through the Environmental Health Officers Regulation Council of Nigeria, the ministry partnered sister ministries and other agencies of government to commence the decontamination of public places across the country. 60,000 environmental health volunteer corps was activated to provide surveillance services to monitor compliance with COVID-19 preventive measures, especially in schools, health centers, and religious worship centers across the country.
The surveillance desk officers are also going to enforce the issue of social distancing, applying or compulsory putting of the face mask, and also making sure that provisions are made for hand sanitizers and also wash hand stations.
A guideline on the handling and management of infectious waste was released by the National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, NESRA, to prevent spread of the virus by cleaners and other personnel in hospitals and health centers. Nigeria's response to COVID-19 had legislative backing, with the National Assembly providing needed support to the executives to effectively combat the pandemic. The 2020 appropriation bill was reviewed to reflect the emerging realities of the year, while a 500 billion naira COVID-19 stimulus package was approved to provide a buffer against the impact of the pandemic on the people and the economy.
We hope that this bill, when approved, will alleviate the hardship that our people are going through in this period of COVID-19. COVID-19 pandemic.
Efforts that we have made in this particular budget is to ensure that there are a lot of supports for individuals as well as businesses, especially the SMEs. And this will ensure that businesses are able to stay afloat and individuals are able to live a life that is meaningful.
The House of Representatives revised legislative agenda in tune with current realities, passed infectious diseases bill and facilitated the establishment of COVID-19 testing center in the National Assembly. Members of the House also donated 2 months' salary to the COVID-19 fund to aid the fight against the virus.
We acted to slow the spread of disease, to treat the sick, comfort the afflicted, and provide for the most vulnerable in our nation's citizens.
Although COVID-19 altered plans and programs of individuals and governments of the world, many societies managed to build resilience against the pandemic. In Nigeria, for instance, other national concerns continue to dominate the news waves alongside the pandemic. The disagreement between federal government and various associations in universities and polytechnics over non-payment of salary due to non-registration with the Integrated Payroll and Personnel Information System, IPPIS, and other grievances resulted in industrial action by lecturers in public tertiary institutions across the country.
But as far as IPPIS is concerned, as the template exists now, it is a no-go area with our union.
To appeal to both parties to just try to come to a compromise.
But the issue of strike, no.
Nigerian universities can make meaningful contributions to addressing the challenges of the country, e.g., economy, security, and corruption, if given the opportunities.
The Ministry of Education, we have a lot of work to do in organizing the universities and making them credible by putting proper infrastructure and getting qualified staff.
The Nigerian government in the year under review regulated the oil and gas sector and discontinued direct investments in the electricity sector. Our decisions are led to increase in the pump price of petroleum products and electricity tariffs.
People going to be building refineries near the borders so that they are able to buy subsidized fuel and then take it outside the country where there are no subsidies. So how does that run? Is it poor people that run filling stations?
The subsidy on energy alone for 2020 is put at 540 billion naira. I mean, COVID has affected us. Look at what happened in the international oil market. It affected us seriously. So government fund has reduced. Therefore, let's bring in private equity. As a matter of fact, that is one of the things that led to privatization.
The organized labor kicked immediately, threatening to shut down the economy by downing tools.
So let's also look for solution. How do we mitigate this impact, which is very pronounced on workers?
We are losing additional 15% of what we gain as a result of signing minimum wage.
But through negotiations, the contending issues were however resolved to avert the industrial action.
That all issues cannot be resolved at once, and this understanding is to have a plan on how those issues shall be finally resolved in the future. We have discussed the issue of the state of our refineries with timeline on how to achieve sustainable refining.
Singular demonstration of good faith and patriotism by the organized labor. As painful as some of the decisions are to your workers, you put the cause of our nation first.
The environment sector also recorded gains in the year 2020 despite the limiting effects of the coronavirus pandemic. Nigeria continues to play its part in global efforts to mitigate climate change and protect natural ecosystems and their biodiversity, with President Muhammadu Buhari addressing the first United Nations Biodiversity Summit. The federal government also gave approvals on several policies aimed at protecting the environment, mitigating desertification and desert encroachment, reducing cases of erosion and pollution, as well as increasing forest covers in the country. The latest was the approval for the establishment of additional 10 national parks in the country.
National parks have great potential for the development of research, particularly on agriculture, medicine, and biotechnology. They also serve as field laboratories for Nigerian universities and other tertiary institutions. The national parks are Nigeria's eco-treasure and have the potentials of contributing substantially to the national economy when fully developed, as obtains in East and Southern Africa.
Other approvals in the environment sector include a new policy on solid waste management, Gender Action Plan on Climate Change, National Forest Policy, and a mangroves restoration project in the Niger Delta region.
Nigeria has the largest mangrove cover in Africa and the third or fourth largest in the world, and we have neglected it over the years, and we're now suffering the consequences. So our solutions to coastal erosion and loss of biodiversity for coastal communities is in mangrove restoration. So that is what we are taking up now.
7 sites in the ongoing environmental remediation and cleanup exercise in Ogoni land were completed and handed over to the federal government by the Hydrocarbon Pollution Remediation Project, HYPREP.
There are stages and there are processes that you have to go through, and it takes time. For the soil to heal, it takes time. For the water to be cured, it takes time. These are processes that must be followed. That does not mean to say that other activities cannot be taking place in Ogoni land.
The year 2020 cast a blight on the environment when heavy rains and excess water from River Niger flooded hundreds of communities in several states of the Federation, resulting in deaths, loss of livelihoods, and destruction of property worth billions of naira.
The flood has covered all the refuge we have, and the thing is moving into houses, causing a lot of diseases, causing a lot of problems.
3 good years, I spent my money and everything. After getting hope, the flood will come and will consume all.
The downsides of the year notwithstanding, 2020 will remain indelible in the minds of teachers in Nigeria. They are presented a presidential gift in the form of upward review of their salaries, increase in the years of service, and other incentives to motivate and reward them.
Special salary scale for teachers in basic and secondary schools, including provisions for rural posting allowance, science teacher allowances, and peculiar allowances, is hereby given. Free tuition and automatic admission for biological children of teachers in their respective schools.
I am confident that many teachers will rise up to the challenge to work harder and emerge as stars of our future.
I will give kudos to Mr. President especially for deeming it fit to do this to Nigerian teachers. It will definitely go a long way. It will go a long way to boost the morale of the teachers. We just pray and hope that it will not linger before it's begin to materialize.
Even with our deficit in infrastructure, a motivated teacher can still make a difference. So I think it's going to make a lot of difference. Number one, we are going to be able to retain more teachers. Number two, it will give them confidence. And then it's part of the process of, taking back that place of pride that the teaching profession and teachers occupied in Nigerian society.
The education sector recorded other highs in 2020. The Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TETFund, for instance, inaugurated a committee to boost research and development in Nigeria. TETFund also created 12 centers of excellence in all the geopolitical zones to strengthen economic development.
That there is but one truth to socio-economic and technological advancement. It is in R&D. And the 12 duty COEs, 2 in each geopolitical zone of Nigeria, which we are to fund for 5 years, starting from today, with a grant of 1 billion naira each, will be at the heart of the mechanism for the attainment of our nation's aspirations.
Several infrastructure in tertiary and basic education institutions were also provided to boost educational development in the country.
By having these projects, we have increased the number of facilities and reduced the level of interaction and enhanced the possibility of social distancing among students.
After 33 years of abandonment, the Itakpe Warri Standard Gauge Rail was inaugurated in 2020 a landmark achievement in the transport sector for the year.
The railway infrastructure that I have the honor to commission today is an important link for the country's economy as the Central Rail Line. This government has also approved to link this line further from Itape to Abuja, thereby connecting the northern zone of the country and also extending southwards to link the Warri Port.
To further boost rail transportation in the country, coaches and 6 locomotives are delivered to Lagos-Ibadan and Warri-Itape rail line. Abuja-Kaduna Rail had 10 additional coaches and 2 locomotives.
We don't have enough coaches and locomotives to move our passengers. That is why you hear slogans like ticket racketeering, this and that and that. But with these new deliveries, those things are going to be things of the past because everybody will be taken care of.
The federal government also approved more than $1.9 billion contracts for the construction of a rail line linking Kano to Maradi in Niger Republic, with additional $3.9 billion approval for the construction of Abuja-Itape Lokoja rail line and construction of New Warri Seaport with support from China. Rehabilitation and reconstruction of the Port Harcourt-Maiduguri Eastern Narrow Gauge Railway was also approved at the sum of $3.2 billion, while the contract for the construction of Ibadan-Kano-Kaduna rail line was signed. In the maritime transportation sector, the federal government transformed eastern ports, revived Onitsha Seaport, which received its first cargo barges after 42 years, and procured $1 million safety equipment to secure waterways in the country.
So what we have done is to break that jinx. So nobody can tell me now it's impossible to move barges from containers from One to Onitsha. Nobody can mention that.
Year 2020 also recorded major legislative successes with the confirmation of more than 60 presidential nominees, including 43 career and non-career ambassadors, and the historic second term for the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, by the Senate.
The Senate Committee on Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, hereby recommends as follows: that the Senate do confirm the nomination of Professor Mahmood Yakubu as chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC.
Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu for appointment as Chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Senate also passed several bills in 2020, including Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act Amendment Bill, Police Act Amendment Bill, Police Academy Bill, Transport Commission Bill, and Sexual Harassment Bill. Motions were moved for the sack of service chiefs on the floor of the Senate, where the President also presented the 2021 budget. The Senate held budget defense by ministries, departments, and agencies, and eventually passed the appropriation bill into law pursuant to the sustenance of the January-December budget cycle.
So there will be 2 budgets running. Funds from 2021 up to 31st March 2021, and then the implementation of the 2021 budget itself to start from January. That is absolute fight against the recession we are suffering from.
The Senate, in the year under review, commenced investigation into alleged fraud in the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, and swore in 5 senators who won the December 2020 senatorial by-elections. The House of Representatives had its share of legislative activities in the year 2020, which highlighted with the passage of the year's appropriation bill. The House also passed the Police Reform Bill and held public hearings on the NDDC, during which the former acting managing director slumped.
We have worked with the federal government, ministries, departments, and agencies to set priorities. We reached out to stakeholders and citizens groups. We liaised with constituencies or with constituents to understand their expectations and reflect their expectations, those expectations in our consideration of the appropriation bill.
The House also embarked on legislative diplomacy concerning challenges of Nigerian traders in Ghana. A year that began like any other, 2020 suddenly became victim of a pandemic that changed the tide of its progression. COVID-19 not only altered the pace and tone of the year, it determined the way people lived, loved, worked, and related with one another.
Well, to start even the end of the year in recession, and we are still in the recession, there is nothing that is impossible with commitments. If the government is committed, the citizenry sincerely are also committed to making sure we all team up, because this is our country. Whether you like it or not, even if you have dual citizenship, you still have Nigerian blood in your system. So it is our country, and it will take all of us to together put our hands together and make sure we bring out this country out of recession and put it on the path of prosperity.
Having survived the odds and turns of the year, opportunity which many did not have, James Agaman Lafia is grateful to have crossed the hurdles into 2021 and cleaves onto the hope that the new year will be much more better for him, his family, community, and indeed the government and people of Nigeria.